In 1909, Santa Monica built a sewage pipe into the Pacific Ocean and accidentally created one of the world's most visited landmarks. That landmark is the Santa Monica Pier. Today, it stretches nearly 1,600 feet over the Pacific, home to the world's only solar-powered Ferris wheel, drawing millions of visitors every year, and standing as the symbolic western end of Route 66. But the pier didn't begin as the landmark it is today, and the story of how it got here is one most people have never been told. In the early 1900s, Santa Monica had a problem it could no longer ignore. The city had spent years building its reputation on a clean, sunlit beach, fresh air, the Pacific Ocean, and the kind of California life people moved across the country to find. Yet, beneath that image, the sewage system was quietly failing, and treated waste was building up too close to shore, against the very beach the city had been selling to the world. So officials needed a solution, and they needed it before that image collapsed. A local advisor named L.G. Osgood brought the answer to the city council: build in concrete, not wood. Wooden piers along the California coast were already being eaten alive from below by teredo worms, small shipworms that bored silently through timber pilings until the structure above had nothing left holding it up. Concrete had never been used for a West Coast pier before, yet it was the only material that those worms could not touch. So on September 28, 1907, voters approved a $150,000 bond, and the council chose local architect Edwin H. Warner's design for a 1,600-foot structure, carrying an 18-inch sewage pipe beneath the dock, angled so that gravity alone would push the waste seaward. Engineer August Stutzer broke ground on April 8, 1908. On September 9, 1909, California Admission Day, the pier was opened, and thousands turned out. Bands played on the deck, celebrity lifeguard George Freeth appeared as a guest, and the city closed the evening with a theatrical performance called The Surrender of Rex Neptune, King Neptune bowing to Queen Santa Monica, the ocean symbolically giving way to concrete. The city was proud, and they kept repeating the same thing about what they had just built. Concrete was indestructible. What happened next, however, was something the city had not accounted for. On April 17, 1919, just 10 years after opening, a crowd had gathered along the pier to watch a Navy vessel review when the structure beneath them began to give way. Water had silently worked its way into the concrete and corroded the steel rebar from the inside out, and the pier the city had sworn was indestructible sank 2 feet in a single afternoon. They spent the next 2 years rebuilding it, this time with wood. The concrete the city had trusted to outlast everything had just failed in 10 years. And the ocean had done exactly what the city swore it never could. Over time, people began using the pier in unexpected ways, and what quietly grew around it would catch the attention of someone the city never saw coming. While the city was busy debating repairs and rebuilding costs, the public had already made up their own minds about what the pier was for. Fishermen were showing up at dawn without an invitation. Families were walking all the way to the far end, just to stand above open water with the city behind them and the whole Pacific ahead. And swimmers were racing each other in the surf below. The sewage pipe running beneath their feet was the last thing on anyone's mind. What they noticed was the view, the salt air, and the simple fact that Santa Monica had finally given them somewhere worth going. And that was enough to bring them back week after week. The Pacific Electric Railway, better known as the Red Cars, was running a steady route from Los Angeles directly to Santa Monica every afternoon. And week after week, the pier filled without the city lifting a finger. By 1930, the first doubles beach volleyball game ever played in the United States would happen right on the sand beside it, and paddleboard racing would follow along the same stretch not long after. So a beach culture was steadily forming around a structure designed purely to carry waste out of sight, and nobody had planned a single part of it. What was growing around this pier was turning Santa Monica into the defining image of Southern California beach life, a reputation it still carries today. Then, between 1920 and 1928, the city shut the sewage outfall off for good. The one reason the $150,000 bond had ever been approved was gone. Yet the pier was more crowded than it had ever been, and Santa Monica had accidentally produced one of the most popular public spaces on the California coast, with no plan for what any of it was supposed to become. Someone else, however, had already answered that question, and he was already making moves before the city even realized he was looking. As more people gathered, attention turned towards its potential. And what this man was about to build would change the pier in ways nobody in City Hall ever anticipated. Charles I.D. Loof arrived in New York from Germany in 1870, and by 1876 had built the very first carousel at Coney Island. Over the next 4 decades, he constructed amusement parks at Ocean Park, Redondo Beach, Venice, and Long Beach. So when he watched those red cars pull into Santa Monica every afternoon, full of people with nowhere to go once they stepped off, he did not see an underused public structure. He saw what the city had been sitting on without realizing it. In February 1916, Louvre paid $50,000 for 200 feet of beachfront directly south of the municipal pier, secured a 20-year franchise, and on June 12, 1916, the Louvre Hippodrome was opened as a 2-story California Byzantine building, housing one of his signature hand-carved carousels. That same summer, the Blue Streak Racer opened alongside it, a wooden roller coaster pulled from the 1915 San Diego Exposition, 60 feet tall with more than 3,600 feet of track. In a single season, Charles Louvre had turned a public sewage pier into the most exciting destination on the entire Southern California coast. Then on July 1, 1918, Louvre died just 2 years after the Hippodrome was opened. Yet, despite his passing, the Santa Monica Amusement Company bought everything from his family in 1923 and kept building, eventually commissioning the La Monica Ballroom, a 15,000-square-foot maple dance floor built to hold 5,000 people, broadcasting live radio heard across the country from a pier that had been a sewage line barely 15 years before. On July 23, 1924, opening night at the La Monica Ballroom drew an estimated 50,000 people and caused Santa Monica's very first traffic jam. A concrete pipe built to carry waste had become the social center of the entire city. However, the higher this pier had climbed, the harder what was coming for it was going to hit. The decades ahead would test everything the pier had become in ways nobody standing in that crowd could have prepared for. What started as small changes had grown this sewage pier into the center of the city's life, but nothing that rises that fast ever stays untouched for long. Throughout the 1920s, the pier operated at full capacity. The La Monica Ballroom broadcast live radio heard across the country, and when a February 1926 storm caused roughly $75,000 in damage, the city repaired it without slowing down. Then, by the late 1930s, a mobster named Tony Cornero had set up offshore gambling barges in Santa Monica Bay, running paying customers through the pier every night as his private entry point until a 1939 state raid shut the whole operation down. A pier built to carry sewage had just spent 3 years as a gangster's front door. However, what followed would prove far more damaging. When the Great Depression arrived, the Santa Monica Amusement Company, which had overseen the pier's most successful years, saw every ride except the carousel go dark by 1930. Management went bankrupt, and attractions that had taken years to build were demolished in months. World War II followed, and when Walter Newcomb took over the Pleasure Pier under a lease agreement in 1943, the pier shifted its role entirely, operating under wartime conditions, with military docking and fish landings replacing the entertainment that had once defined it. After Newcomb died in 1948, his wife Enid ran operations until 1953, when the city took over management directly. After the war, KTLA filmed live entertainment from the pier in 1948, and Spade Cooley ran a television program from the La Monica from 1948 through 1954. But then, Disneyland opened in Anaheim in 1955, pulling the entire entertainment conversation inland overnight. And the pier that had once caused Santa Monica's first traffic jam was now something city officials were openly calling an eyesore. By 1963, the La Monica Ballroom was gone. But what came next was something nobody saw coming. In the winter of 1972, city manager Perry Scott presented a plan to replace the pier entirely with the 35-acre artificial island in Santa Monica Bay, a 30-story hotel, a convention center, a sports pavilion, and a 4-lane bridge to the mainland. When a reporter asked whether the public should have a vote, Scott reportedly answered that letting citizens decide every issue would be tantamount to anarchy. So the council approved the island plan unanimously in June 1972. Then they went into a closed session without any public notice or community debate and voted to demolish the pier. A decision that would have permanently erased 63 years of history was made in a room the public was never told existed. Nobody outside of it was supposed to find out, but someone did. As its future was quietly decided behind a closed door, what happened the moment the vote leaked out was something the council never once prepared for. In January 1973, more than 1,000 residents packed the Civic Auditorium, and 2 groups formed almost overnight. The Friends of Santa Monica Pier, led by Larry Barber, a cook at Al's Kitchen right there on the pier, and the Save Santa Monica Pier Citizens Committee. Weeks of organized public pressure followed. and by late February 1973, the council reversed the demolition vote. Then in the 1973 election, every single council member who had voted to tear the pier down lost their seat. In 1975, voters passed Proposition 1, putting the pier's protection directly into law, and the Hippodrome was designated a city landmark that same year, eventually earning National Historic Landmark status in 1987. A community had turned a closed-room decision into permanent legal protection. Yet despite surviving the city that owned it, the pier still had the Pacific Ocean to deal with, and what that meant for the structure's future became one of the most defining moments in its entire history. In January 1983, violent winter storms sent swells over 20 feet high crashing into the pier, destroying the lower deck. So the city sent a construction crane out to begin emergency repairs on March 1, 1983. That same evening, however, a second storm hit, and what followed raised serious questions about the recovery effort itself. The crane, the one sent specifically to fix the damage, was left unsecured in the water, and the surge grabbed it, dragging it directly into the pier's own load-bearing pilings, and used it as a battering ram from below until a 400-foot section of the western end tore completely away, taking 2 cranes, a boat derrick, 3 cars, and a pickup truck into the Pacific with it. Between a third and a half of the entire structure was gone in a single night. The very thing the city had sent to save the pier had helped the ocean finish the job. The city of Santa Monica created the Santa Monica Pier Restoration Corporation in November 1983. And by 1990, the western section was fully rebuilt and the carousel restored. In May 1996, Pacific Park opened the first full amusement park on the pier since 1930. And in November 1998, the Pacific Wheel became the world's first solar-powered Ferris wheel, earning a Guinness World Record in 2012. By this point, the pier had become a recognizable part of American popular culture, appearing in The Sting in 1973, Forrest Gump in 1994, and Iron Man in 2008, with Marilyn Monroe known to have visited the Hippodrome carousel privately in her later years. On November 10, 2009, a Route 66 end of the trail sign was dedicated on the deck, marking the pier as the symbolic western terminus of America's most famous highway, a connection that carries added significance as Route 66 approaches its centennial in 2026. The Twilight concert series, which began in 1985 and has featured Earth, Wind & Fire, Mavis Staples, and Khalid, has become one of the most beloved free summer concert traditions in Los Angeles. Today, Pacific Park operates 12 rides. The Loof Hippodrome Carousel still turns inside the 1916 building, and the Santa Monica Pier Aquarium sits beneath the eastern deck. A $35.5 million bridge replacement is currently underway. The 1939 WPA-era access bridge is being rebuilt to modern seismic standards, funded largely by the Federal Highway Bridge Program, with completion expected before the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. Today, the pier stands as a landmark shaped by decades of change, carried this far by the people who refuse to let it disappear. What stands on that deck today started in 1909 as a concrete sewage pipe, yet collapsed a decade later. Charles Loof saw what the city missed and turned it into the most exciting place on the California coast. The Depression stripped it bare, a gangster claimed it, and a closed-room vote nearly erased it entirely. A repair crane helped the ocean finish the job. Yet through every one of those moments, it came back because enough people refused to let it disappear.